that the report tries to emphasize development of African research leadership that is led by African scholars and institutions. They're concerned with building capacity and capability for future African research leaders, and the entire report sort of looks at the landscape of what is happening now in African institutions towards this goal. They also identify the stakeholders who would be involved in this entire program: funders, institutions, research leaders, and researchers. So the same sorts of people who are also involved in research development strategies, and their objectives, what they sought to do in that piece of work. One thing that they have said is that the current programs that they reviewed emphasize an ECR training, which is useful, but not so much mid-career and above. So they're concentrating on the lower end to try to develop these new skills for future research leaders, but currently those who are in the middle or established careers in research, kind of forgotten. There's a nice list that, again, you can look through in your own time of the different projects. You may recognize some of them. These are current sort of research leadership programs across various parts of Africa and led by certain institutions. And I think that gives you a good overview of some of the key ones. And it covers, they cover different fields, different subject areas. And there is definitely an emphasis on ECR training. So within this kind of research that was done about African leadership and what the African leadership model should look like, Vitae also used their research and development framework to come up with what they thought were key competencies and key areas that need to be stressed in the development of African research leaders. And they kind of present it in this T shape, that there's this breadth of competencies that are important for the African research leader to reach out into communities, to develop social interventions and policies around the improvement of people's lives, and also to kind of at the same time establish themselves as key researchers in these areas. So there's a huge amount of breadth expected from the African research leader, as well as depth. So this is quite challenging, as you might imagine, to have both, to try to be concentrating on both aspects. They also developed something they call the 7-step model. And again, I would leave it to you to have a good look at this to see how much you agree with the different steps that are meant to be important for African research leaders, and how that kind of relates to your own experience of this. For example, things like appetite for risk-taking, how important is that really for African researchers? On the job, definitely that would be important, but there's different aspects here to look at more in depth. Now, back to this whole idea of why we would want to start looking at programs, targeted research and development programs that include open science as a main part of those activities. Again, repeating what I said at the beginning, today's ECRs are tomorrow's research leaders. They are the best advocates for change and innovation. And embedding the OS activities into their research capability training would be a sensible strategy for building future advocates, people who can sort of spread the benefits, spread news, or spread information about the benefits of open science and open collaboration and open research. The advancement of ECRs is also going to be dependent on evaluation and assessment that could be built around open science activities. So if we build in open science activities as part of the process of evaluation and assessment, that is going to also help to change the status quo and encourage a different kind of research leadership. So these are the advantages of bringing in an explicit open science agenda into the ECR training, research and development strategies. So now I'm going to present to you some work that is also done by the European Union, something called the Open Science Career Assessment Matrix. So they've come up with a set of, again, sort of competencies, abilities that they think ought to be assessed if you are kind of applying an open science lens on what these researchers are doing. So again, you will see the huge emphasis on these things are very similar to the activities that are identified in the researcher development framework in a generic way. But when they are applied with open science in mind, then there become some specific open research emphases, things like using fair data principles in research management and output of your results, applying open data management processes, using open data sets, making use of open data from other researchers. So everything in this part of the framework kind of stresses this is how it will be done. This is how you could achieve these capabilities using an open science approach. There's two sets of sort of these activities, they call them, they like capabilities or competencies. There's a whole set of them around research output, the process, service and leadership, impact, teaching and supervision, and professional experience. And these could very easily be mapped onto the research and development framework that we just looked at as a kind of a lens. So how can lipsense play a role in helping to bring this about, this kind of change in the way in which we look at research and development for early career researchers towards those objectives that I mentioned earlier, bringing early career researchers into those roles of research leadership with a mind towards doing open science. So lipsense is, of course, promoting open science agendas and the way that research could be done across Africa. Through our activities, we are constantly supporting initiatives that move open science forward. And in terms of the three sort of pillars, lipsense could support the capacity building initiatives that could combine researcher training and competencies around open science with other professional development activities. So we could support those kinds of training initiatives. We could influence the development of policy around the evaluation and assessment frameworks that focus more on open science and promote open and collaborative research. We could support the strengthening of research infrastructure that aids the development of open and collaborative research activities. And we could play to our strengths as a network of information professionals, higher education decision makers, academics, researchers, NGOs, NRENs, to influence these decisions with a focus on African-specific initiatives led by African professionals. So that's the end of my presentation, and open for questions now or later. Thank you very much.
Prof, thank you, Pam. Prof Chinway? Professor Chinway, are you there?
Right. Thank you, Pamela. Thank you very much. It's been so wonderful. You have made us understand, we librarians, that we have a key role to play as far as open science is concerned, and even developing the early career researchers. We appreciate so much. We keep our questions till the last presentation. We're going to have the next presentation that is going to be presented by Professor Adeyemi Adetola, the former Vice Chancellor of Covenant University. It's going to be represented by Professor Conrad Omin-Himin. Pardon my inability to pronounce it very well. Adetola will be represented by Professor Conrad Omin-Himin, who is going to take us through on promoting open research in universities, role of management. Please, I call on Professor Conrad, to please give us a little introduction bio of himself. Professor Conrad, are you there?
I am here.
Thank you so very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. But first, I don't know if I should give a brief, so I'm going to be as brief as possible. I am Conrad Omohimi, professor of biotechnology, and I am the initiator and the coordinator of Open Access at Covenant University. And I will be making a presentation this afternoon. Is that brief enough, ma'am?
Please, if you have more, give us in the next 2 minutes.
Okay.
You can give us more information if you really want in the next 2 minutes. Your network is low.
Yes, yeah, it seems his network has frozen. Let's just give it some seconds and hopefully he'll be back.
That's beautiful. While we wait, I want to emphasize that Pamela was able to tell us that for you to initiate or for you to propagate open science, you must be a role model. And also, she kept emphasizing that the early career researcher are the career leaders or research leaders of tomorrow. And they will are the best advocates for change and innovation. I want to believe you fully, because those of us who are old, we intend to insist on we are pessimistic, we don't like new things. We don't like accepting new things so easily. Is Prof there? Is he back? Are you back, Prof?
He seems to have dropped out. He seems to have dropped out.
Okay, can we call the next presenter? While we wait for him.
I think possibly we may have to do that. I'm just going to try and see if I can get him on the phone. So if you can keep speaking there, Prof, about another 30 seconds.
All right.
Let me try and reach Professor Con.
Okay, so beautiful. Pamela was able to take us through the strategies and excellently. She started, for those of us who may have come late or who are kind of distracted in the course of the presentation, early career researchers, what they are, who are the budding researchers, and what impressed me so much about her presentation is this statement that they are the people that they are the best advocates for change and innovation. And I want to think back the early in the 90s and the early 2000s when we started talking about e-learning, and the professors, many of the professors said it won't work. It won't work. It was the young ones that came up and said, yeah, it could work. So if we could get the early career researchers that we bulldoze their way through, insisting that open science is the best way to go, I think we can make it, because those of us at the age of the profession, we are almost very resistant. We resist a new development. And there is something she also mentioned that for those who want to be leaders in that is model for the early career researchers, that you have a huge lot of work to do. The brief and the width of work you can do is so much. She reeled out all that we needed to do, and is sharing that she's telling us that lipsense will be of help when it comes to supporting librarians and even the early career researchers in getting to know the way and the means of putting their feet down as far as this open science is concerned. I don't know whether we are good to go. Are we good to go, Mr. Wen?
Yes, I spoke to him. He's trying to log back in, but he seems not to have been able to do so. So it might probably be pertinent to move on to the next presenter.
The next presenter.
Yes.
Okay, so while we wait for him, we get to the next presenter, who is Professor Simon Taylor. Is the Vice Dean Research, CEDPS, Brunel University, London, and is going to take us on towards a survey for open science capacity development. Professor Simon is the Vice Dean, like I have said, for the College of Engineering, Design and Physical Sciences. He's a professor of computer science and a co-chair of modeling and simulation group. He has led and contributed to major open science and digital infrastructure projects in Africa for over 10 years. Professor, you are welcome to take us through towards a survey for open science capacity development. Are you there?
I certainly am.
Oh, you are welcome. You are very much welcome.
Thank you, Professor Chinway. And well, it's nice to have the opportunity to speak. So thanks, Owen and Eko-Konnect, for inviting me to give this short presentation. And I have to say I've enjoyed the conference so far. So let me see if I can share my screen. Owen, if you can just give me a verbal thumbs up if you can see this. Okay, can you see my PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, we can see it, Simon.
Great. Okay, let's see if we can get a slideshow going. Right. Okay. So
we can see you. Yes.
Thank you very much. So yes, as I've been so nicely introduced, I'm a professor of computer science at Brunel University, London, and I've been working with many African researchers and NRENs for a long time. And I just basically want to give an overview of this survey that we're wanting to launch effectively today, and a bit of background. So first of all, just a personal perspective I'd just like to share. This is kind of more about, who am I and why on earth should I be launching a survey? So there's sort of two themes here, two threads. So I'm currently co-running a modeling and simulation group at Brunel, and really for a lot of people at a distance, AI, data science and simulation and modeling are all kind of in the same area of taking data, analyzing data and trying to make good change in the physical world. And you can apply the techniques in health, in manufacturing, in many areas. Our group is ranked #1 in the UK and #4 worldwide in a special area, sub-area discrete event simulation, and that's by H-index. We've had a lot of impact in industry, primarily looking at digital infrastructures, that's mainly distributed computing or high performance computing, and seeing if we can make good effects on simulation and data science. And we've developed all sorts of new products in collaboration with industry, most recently to do with cloud. So I'm saying that basically so I can say that I know what I'm talking about with digital infrastructures. And we've got large EU projects that we participate in. Stamina is probably the biggest one right now, which is a pandemic project in health security. And within the context of that, I've been working on open science for modeling and simulation because I've been working in this area all my career, so almost 30 years now. And I've seen practices change, but the majority of researchers in this field, in my field of modeling and simulation, I would argue are still strangers to open science, which is an interesting claim to make because there is a perception sometimes that, certainly in the UK, that all researchers embrace open science. I'll give you an example. If you want to pursue open modeling, where I create, say, a model of a hospital and I want to share that openly, there's almost no advice on how I should do that, mainly because the focus is on data. And even within data, it can be confusing as to what you should do to get started. Anyway, in Africa, I've had the pleasure of working with admittedly Ubuntu first, and then Wakran and many others in several projects. So we started off in 2009 with a spin out from the FEAST study, which started the Eko-Konnect programs to try and establish the value of research digital infrastructures, or e-infrastructures, in Africa. And that demonstrated that there was a hunger for this kind of work. That went on to EI for Africa, and we had a very exciting program from 2012 to 2014, and helped NREN services get going. And arguably, we've affected 300 million students and 300 universities over 11 countries with that work. And indeed, that's when I first met Owen. A very enjoyable collaboration has existed since then. In 2015, we got SciGaia going, which I'm sure some of you remember. We developed a demonstrator open science platform, mainly because we were trying to think what's the best way of using digital infrastructures to benefit African researchers. Digital infrastructures are a core of open science, so the question is, could we develop such a thing to jumpstart open science? And we created some good exemplars. We ran some very exciting e-research hackfests and developed 3 new open science projects, 30 open science projects with that. And a couple of exciting outputs from SciGaia was the NADRE open access repository in Ethiopia, which is being cloned in different places in Africa now, and the adoption of open science by the Ethiopian government, and also lipsense. It was great to sort of get lipsense going directly after the end of SciGaia, and lipsense has carried on that good work. And we also worked in the Tandem project at the same time to help develop an NREN service roadmap that Wakran is implementing. So I'd like to say there I know what I'm talking about. However, we all know in the last talks by Irina and Pam, we know that the general concept of open science it involves adopting new approaches to scientific practice that promotes the free access to research outputs, with an emphasis on reuse, redistribution, and reproduction. We know that there are widespread benefits for Africa, particularly highlighted most recently by UNESCO. We also know that there needs to be some form of digital infrastructure. Most scientific outputs these days are digitally based, ranging from the article through to data, through to software, etc. Where can we put this? How can we promote access to that? And then across that, there are many, many associated concepts. I'll pick the first one, open access. Simply, that's the open access to the articles that you publish as in pursuit of your scientific work. But that is complex. Open data, even more complex. Open research protocols and notebooks, where you make the methodology of your work available. Pre-registration, so you can demonstrate that you've not changed your study. Open source software is almost a completely separate discipline in its own right, etc. The reason I'm saying that is, in my experience of open science in modeling and simulation, and my experience of open science at my own university and in the UK and now in Africa, it's very difficult to actually answer a simple question: where to start or how to begin. So just to share something that we've been working on in an empirical research area, this is modeling and simulation. We're trying to give a sort of conceptual model of increasing openness with effort. So for example, level 0, not open. We don't want to talk about that because that's not open science at all. But unfortunately, that is arguably the majority of scientific output right now. Level 1 open access, making your article open through green or golden or some sort of hybrid model. How do you do that? Level 2, open data. So now we've got the data in the paper being more open. Level 3, you're producing the data and the software in such a way that somebody can independently, openly reproduce the results of your work. And admittedly, the majority of open science seems to focus on the first two levels. And this is our own interpretation. There are others. It kind of skips at open reproducibility. The next bit, how do you do it? How do you get an independent validation on the work that you've just done? If you've got software, as a lot of empirical research has, just trying to implement and run it can be very difficult. So we're arguing you should have a level 4, which is an open environment. So you make use of virtual machines or virtual environments to try and make the implementation of that software as easy as possible. And of course, once you've gone virtual, it makes a whole host of other things possible. So the next step will be actually running everything behind the Science Gateway, a web-based portal on an open infrastructure, such as the kind of thing that Eko-Konnect and Wakren have been working on. There's a link to a paper. It's a working paper. We believe in sort of open arguments and discussion. So I'd welcome discussion and debate on that, because we're advocating this in modeling and simulation, but it's still a pretty new idea that we're trying to air. So against all that, we've been working, so Irina, Pam, Owen, and Omo from Wakren, we've been working towards trying to understand how we can develop effective training for African, or in this case, Nigerian universities. So I think one of the themes about open science so far in these presentations is it's great, it's a fantastic idea, but it can be conceptually quite difficult to get started. So based on some of the experiences we've had at Brunel, Emma Norris, who's a psychologist, and I produced it was an open research questionnaire that we've adapted for open science. We ran this at Brunel to understand how our own scientists perceive open science and what training and support is needed. So what we've done is we've now adapted this into a brief survey to try and understand what researchers perceive that they would like in the first instance in Nigeria. So the questions are, it's not a long survey like some have been. What open science techniques are you aware of, have you used? And we're very interested to hear what researchers who maybe don't come to events like this understand, or what they've been exposed to in open science. So there's a couple of categories that they can pick there. And then what would help you use open science techniques? And Pam sort of given a brilliant overview of an infrastructure, conceptualization of how open science could be made part of a career. And we've got questions related to that to sort of give people a voice to help us understand a sort of on the ground reaction to that. And then of course, what open science training would help you. Really, and it's a short presentation, so the conclusions are open science can have a major positive impact on African science. We know that. If you can take time, and we're going to disseminate this survey quite widely around Nigeria, help us to understand what's needed, and then the open science team in and around Eko-Konnect can get together and start to actually develop training materials to start getting open science really moving at a sort of grassroots level. Anyway, thank you in advance, and any questions if we have time.
Before Professor Chinway comes in, thank you, Simon, for that. I've actually just put a short URL, a survey link. So those of you who are here can actually, you can actually even have a first-hand look at the survey. What I do intend to do is work with the National Librarian to distribute this survey to librarians across Nigeria and researchers in the next few days. So those of you also, you can actually send this to your colleagues, but we'll be making some formal distributions by the beginning of next week on the survey.
Please, can you come again? The internet connectivity is on.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Can you come again? My internet is not stable, or your own is not stable.
Right. Can someone confirm that you can hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, right. Professor Chinway, I was just thanking Simon for his presentation, and I actually put a short URL link to the survey that he was talking about. And I was mentioning that we will distribute this survey to our librarians, the database that we have, and that I would also like to work with you to possibly extend that survey to others across the country. And by the beginning of next week, we'd want to distribute this as a kind of pilot survey that we conduct in Africa. And for me, it's actually very important because the questions themselves are quite easy to answer, but they're very informative in terms of understanding about open science awareness and practice on campus. And if we get the results of that survey, it will certainly help to inform Eko-Konnect and other stakeholders about how we should proceed with capacity building, webinars, training, be that face-to-face training or others. So the information will actually help to inform us of how best to put a capacity building plan in place for open science and open research. Some of you who were in the session in the morning will know that this question sort of came up. I believe, Adeyemi, you were bringing up some questions about the open science awareness with some of the national stakeholders in the country, and information like this would really help. And I think you also asked about how can we address capacity building because of the resources that sometimes are required to effect that. But with this kind of information we get from the surveys, then we can actually look to speak to some of the stakeholders that were in the morning meeting, TED Fund and the likes, to see how they can get involved with some of the, at least on the ground, face-to-face training that is required. And we would want to come up with some strategies to effect that. And of course, we'd like to liaise with the National Librarian as well to come up with a cohesive strategy to do that. All right. So sorry, that was just my two-piece, but back to you, Prof Chinway. I think, I believe Professor Conrad is back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. I thought he was back.
Really?
I saw him.
I want to believe that.
I saw him.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Are you back, Prof?
He was back.
But I'm not sure he's there. Professor Conrad, are you there?
I'm going to try.
Professor Conrad, are you there?
No, he's not. I'm going to try and call him again.
Okay, try to see if you can reach him.
Yes, but in the meantime, if anyone has any questions, comments, they should raise their hands or put the question in the Q&A session. Now would be a good time to actually talk and ask questions or make some comments.
It's not there. Okay. If I can ask a question, I really want to ask Irina, because Irina, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, I'm speaking as a librarian now. Part of the challenge we have in this part of a country with the deployment of open access is the issue of training. And as much as Pamela has said that lipsense could help us, and the question by Taylor that there is a survey, but I will want us to know how we can get grounded training on open science, because you cannot advocate for what you don't know. We get to have grounded training, and it's supposed to be in person, because some of the virtual trainings you can get online, do it, but it doesn't actually get deep. But if you can have in-person training, is there any way librarians can get in-person training? The second question for you is, which ministry in Nigeria is anchoring this, the UNESCO recommendation and on open science? I think these are the two questions I have for you, Irina.
Thank you so much.
Maybe you can.
Well,
So I agree that in-person training for librarians first, or anyone else who will be training researchers later on, is very important. And with lipsense trying to find money for that. We've been talking to a funder, but unfortunately a timeline with that project application isn't so wonderful and as we thought before. So we're still looking for money. But I think it shouldn't be stopping librarians who are interested to try to get together online and start with online sessions. And that's what we did with digital online research literacy training in IFL, that we had a series of webinars where we got together and we shared experiences, like how we train. If we needed some more knowledge on specific open science topics, we invited an expert who provided that knowledge. So we're looking for money, but I think we should start online now. And to answer your second question, I believe it was a Minister of Science and Research, but I need to check and I'll respond to a chat. And I see that Professor Conrad is here, so maybe we should give him a floor. Apologies that you've been struggling so much.
yeah, thank you, Irina. So, Prof Chinway, yes, I think Professor Conrad is back, so you could introduce him. Before you do so, I would also want to know from you, or give it some thought about which ministries, federal ministries, we can be approaching to sort of do this. In fact, there have been some comments put in the chat with regards this. And yes, actually this morning, we actually touched on opportunities for training with TED Fund. But again, Professor Chinway, with your influence and role, maybe also we could leverage your position to talk to some of the relevant and influential stakeholders at federal level.
Mm-hmm.
That's all right. We don't need to go too far, because all higher institutions, and when we're talking about open science, we are not looking at secondary schools and primary schools. So it is between TED Fund and the Ministry of Education. And then you can now go into, that's part of the question I wanted to ask. You can go into to change the psyche of university vice chancellors. Those are the people that are very much, because of the level we are, level of professor, we don't want things to change. They are very, very averse to open science. So we can still go to them to campaign, advocate. So the three, TED Fund, Minister of Education, then the university vice chancellors of the NUC. So these are the areas we are going to look at. Okay, so Prof Conrad is back, fully back, and we are inviting you to take us on your own part of the presentation.
Thank you,
Prof,
everyone.
are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Yes, promoting open research in universities. You're welcome.
My apologies, everyone. my ICT system have a new security system that seems to have logged me out for probably staying a little too long. I don't know. But I'm back, and I'll just go right straight to my presentation. I'll be speaking on promoting open research in universities, role of management. Like I said earlier, I'm a professor at Covenant University, and I'm the initiator and coordinator of open access at Covenant University. And today I'm actually speaking on behalf of my former Vice Chancellor, Professor Adeyemi Adetola. But I've been together in all of this, so I'll probably be giving some insight into how we've been able to bring open access, open science, open education, and all of that to where it is today at Covenant University. I like to quickly say that university management are, by the very foundational issue of research, pedagogy, and learning, that universities are bound by research projections, and it's fundamental for their vision, regardless of what kind of vision they may have, because it's key to the objective of their vision. And being a research system, they should make decisions based on research too. So university management will provide a prime managerial focal point that must address university direction, must also address the scope they can go to, and of course, funding. These are key. So whatever vision or ideology we have, and university management do not buy into it, the tendency is that it will not receive the required attention. That's as night and day. So it's important that we know what it is that the management need to do if they are to promote open research. Taking from the Covenant University experience, the first really is to have a clear vision of what university wants, which is a management team, alongside with the Senate and board of this university, have very clear plan and put structures in place. So at Covenant, this is our recent revised strategic plan, but we started the open access drive since 2012. And part of the review of the strategic plan had what we call the RECITE, which is research, citation, innovation, and teaching. So those were the revamped vision for the 2018 to 2022 drive. And that's because we had a 10 years vision from 2012 to 2022 of being globally visible. So a clear vision and a plan is most essential. Then again, the management must buy into the concept, because if not, I give a very good example of when I initiated the open access drive in the university. The management then in place didn't see so much about why we needed that. Like Professor Ananobi just said, there's this old horse ideology of either out of misplaced distrust or a whole lot of complaints and challenges that they just put forward. But we didn't give up, and so by 2014, the management then in place saw the wisdom of buying into the open access ideology, and of course, so the next thing they really need to do start buying into is to have very clear policies on what should guide this whole openness. So at Covenant University, we have three policies. We have the open access scholarly publication policy, and then we have the open education resources policy, and then of course we have the open repository policy for driving our self-archiving and other forms of archiving that we have. And then the fourth point I will also say is that there should be a strong research management arm. So following the 2012-2013 strategic plan, there was a coming up of, we had a research management unit before, but it had to be improved on. It had to be given the right resources to manage the vision and the plans. So at Covenant, we have the Covenant University Center for Research, Innovation, and Discovery. Is a center that handles all that have to do with whether research or innovation or discovery in the whole gamut of things that they are dealing with. Moving from there, there has to be in place well laid out protocols and processes, or it will just die out. And once again, there was the issue of the reward system. So the management had to ensure that the openness that we're bringing on board was entrenched through reward for career growth. So whether you're publishing, whether innovating, whatever you were doing, there was a clear line of how to go about it, the clarity of how to go about it. And so it was not confusing, it was not left to suggestions or insinuations. And then, of course, for almost 2 years, we had intensive training, seminars, workshops, symposia to bring the community into the awareness of what we want to do and where we want to go to. And so whether they were the researchers or admin staff, or even as far as students, particularly postgraduate students, there were a whole lot of sensitization. When we thought we didn't have the wherewithal to organize what we needed to achieve, persons were brought in from outside our context. And then, of course, they helped out with helping to give the right training. And then we think we got to a place that we're comfortable with what amount of awareness and knowledge that we had. And then, of course, we also realized we couldn't do it alone, even though the open access drive was quite alien to a number of persons in our country, Nigeria. And people always ask us, what is that? Does it mean just taking? People just felt it was just a way to just get publication, but it was more than that. So there were a lot of collaborations across the industry, academia, government even, and then of course, general society. And then of course, the management must also drive stakeholder work groups and workshops. Is important because when both those that may fund you and those that are receiving and those that are contributing, when everybody's not at par, then the tendency is that there's going to be a disconnect. And when there's disconnect, it comes up with a lot of challenges, which are not necessary and they're uncalled for. So that. And then, of course, the one, I think the most important one, because every other one you could write policies, you could put processes in place, you could design protocols, you could do all the talk and all the training. But there's, I've always had this, people always ask me, open access public research communication, does it mean nobody pays for it? Somebody has to pay for it. And so for us in our own policy, it was clear that part of the recite ideology was to go to our proprietary base and put it before them. And when they bought into it, then it had to be funded. And of course, we are not a nationally or state-funded university. We're a privately funded university. We do not have access to funds like TET Fund and the rest of them that other universities, public universities have in Nigeria. So we had to go to our own proprietary base for funding. And this is essentially the most important part of open science or open research. Yeah, has to be funded. The research itself must be funded. And once again, we have another barrier because we are not a public institution. We don't have even the researchers access to TED fund. We're not even talking about infrastructure funds. We're talking about basic funds for researchers. Because we are in the private sector, we don't have access to that, which I think is an anomaly, but well, this is not the platform for that discussion. But so the research itself has to be funded. And then of course, the research communication has to be funded. So this was very key for us. I won't be talking about the funding for the research itself, but I'll probably just be talking about the communication itself. But so researcher innovators cannot bear the funding burden. But that's the model we have around here in Nigeria, where people tend to pay for research from their pockets and the research communication even from their pockets. So a lot of persons out there are forced to publish in closed access because the model is that you write and then it's free for you, and then of course the publisher gets to make money out of your work because somebody has to pay for it. So that's essentially what was critical for us. So the idea was not just enough, we needed to get funds, and primarily our funding was from our proprietary base. And so whether it was the research or the infrastructure required or the processes itself, we had funding for that. And so looking at the support for publication alone for about 6 years, as little as 72 million was spent on supporting publication. And then of course that rose till 2018, where about 192 million was spent on publication. Of course, COVID came and a few things went down, but recovered. And in the last 2 years, we spent approximately, on an average, about 180 million naira on supporting publication, open access publication. And so in about 6 years, common investors spent about 1.1 or 1.2 billion naira on supporting publication in order to drive the open research ideology that we came up with. Well, a few things of course, as expected, with the burden of payment taken off the back of the researcher, of course, and even the funding of the research, as well as the research communication, there was, of course, some sizable increase. Our publication increased with about 221% from 2016 to 2019, as you can see with the graph, and we rose, and many always ask us how we did that, because if you come to think of it, that as at 2016, we had 8 times less researchers with the closest university there, University of Ibadan. So with a population of about 8 times more researchers than we had, we still rose that much in this number of years. Also, our collaboration increased potentially, even both from Africa and across. And then we're yet to really slow down on that. We're having a lot of collaborations, whether from institutions or even from global organizations. And those are part of the thing we think the visibility has brought for us. Our research ranking, of course, rose, as we can see. And that rise also enabled us. We got into the THE ranking, and by 2019, we're ranked first in the country and West Africa, and ranked among others fifth in Africa, since we adopted the open research system. So I'd like to round up that essentially that's what we've done. And I hope somehow I've been able to put something up there for some other person that might want to be involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Conrad. Professor Chinway, are you still available? Right.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello?
Yes, Professor Chinway, we can hear you. Right, it seems, Prof, it seems—
You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, yes.
Very well.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Prof.
Please, could you help to conclude, Mr. Wen? My internet is very, very weak. Please help to conclude.
All right, Prof. I'll take it from here. Thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. Right. We still have a few minutes left, and I think possibly we can hear some comments or questions that people may have. And this is kind of a two-way thing as well. So it's not just about maybe the participants asking the panelists questions. Even we would like to hear from the attendees. A lot of pertinent things have sort of been discussed. What I am taking from this as well, that has been really great, is that we do need, clearly we need the support of management in the adoption of open science and development of open science communities. Dr. Abbott and Irina touched on how this could be done through the roles of librarians and through postgraduates or postdoctorate early career researchers. But I'd be interested in hearing some of the comments that some people do have. And I think, Adeyemi, I'm going to allow you to make some comments, just because you've actually been making quite a lot of comments in the chat. And if I haven't, Professor Conrad, thank you very much for the presentation. Very insightful, very interesting. And I want to get some comments really from participants. And Adeyemi, I'm going to actually allow you to talk, introduce yourself, and just make some of your observations, so we can probably have the panelists respond.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Adeyemi Adetola from Alex Equipment Federal University in Ebonyi State. Yeah, so I've been making a lot of comments because it's so interesting that we are discussing this. I got to know about the events on Twitter via African Archive. I think it's a popular preprint platform, and they are very present on Twitter. So I just reluctantly, but I was excited to do something about open science, then registered for the event. Yeah, for me, yesterday and today, I'm so happy the direction that you guys are doing great jobs trying to work with the federal government on this to improve research method and practices, especially open science. So I'm impressed with the event actually, and I just try to chip in some comments and just put my own insight about open science and open access, open practices, team science. I've been involved in open science for a while now, trying to create networks in Africa. And the truth is that this is probably the best thing I've seen in terms of Nigeria getting involved in open science. And I'm happy that this kind of initiative is happening. I'm just kind of not happy that I didn't know about it like 2 years ago. It'll be much easier for me, to relate to everything.
I think, Adeyemi, I think one of the things that we should do is actually get you involved with lipsense, because there's a lot of work that I think you will benefit from and can contribute to in the lipsense movement. So I think we'll reach out to you on that. Clearly, you're potentially a champion, kind of person that we'd want to work with. And considering Alex Ekwueme University, and if I look at this, Professor Conrad kind of talked about what's happening in Covenant University, but Covenant University is a private university. So it'll be interesting to know a little bit more, just firsthand, from what is the open science awareness and practice in your university, and who are the key people we should be reaching out to. Professor Conrad mentioned about the role of management, and what Eko-Konnect is basically trying to do with the assistance of lipsense experts is get stakeholders involved. So, we're looking at having a national open science policy along with capacity and infrastructure plans in our roadmap that we want to be driven at national level down to institutional level through our vice chancellors, probably our deans of postgraduate studies, and open science champions. And so that's the approach we want to try to adopt. And I was just wondering if what you think of that. And yes, Professor Chinway, when we talk about institutional management as well, that of course includes the university librarians. But Adeyemi, I was just wondering from your perspective, if that strategy works. How do we get, for example, management to take things on board with open science and open research? And if we want to develop these communities on campus, we still need the support and endorsement of management, as Professor Conrad alluded to in his presentation. So I was just wondering if you had any further thoughts on that, or if anybody else did.
Yeah, I completely agree with you about getting the management involved. My experience the last time, I tried to reach out to some departments in Nigeria just to talk to people about open science. It was so difficult, to even set up a training or a seminar event. So a lot of them will refer me to the management, somebody up there to help me put everything right. So it was a disappointment for me. So definitely we need to get the management involved. As a policy, I see a national policy go a long way to encourage people to adopt open science practices. But again, from the basis, we need to start talking to researchers, people in the institution, that these are practices that ordinarily you should start looking to adopt. in your own research, in whatever you are doing in the university right now. So I'm happy that Covenant University is leading the way in this. This is great. I just have a question for Prof.
Which of the Prof?
Yes, Prof. Omoyimi, sorry.
Professor Conrad Omohi.
Professor Comrade, yes, Professor Comrade.
Conrad, call him.
Comrade, okay. Comrade.
No,
Okay.
it's Conrad Omohimi.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing.
No problem.
Yeah. So my question is, why does it cost so much for you to have people publish in open access? I would think this is open access journals. Why does it cost so much?
Okay. I think there are two questions here, and I will try and answer one after the other. Professor Chinway was asking the role librarians play in our research management center. Key role actually, of the three policies that we have. The third one is open access repository policy. And the library here are the custodians of all our repositories. So there are key persons in the whole setup, such that they are not left out. They manage our publications, they manage in the processes too. They also play a very key role. For example, when we are to pay for a paper, I'll just digress a little. If we're to pay for a paper, it has to go through plagiarism and all those checks. And it has to be certified by the library that it has met those standards. So that's what I was speaking about, protocols and processes. We really have to put a number of protocols and processes in place so that the system is not abused. You can see so much money spent, so it's not abused. And you don't have things like plagiarized work going out of the system. The moment you have incentives, people want to get incentives and not necessarily what they are contributing, sometimes, not always. So you also want to prevent all of that. So the library plays a very pivotal role in ensuring that the processes are well checked and are well followed, such that we do not just put ourselves in an uncomfortable position. In fact, my librarian has been involved with lipsense and other programs, which now and then the Eko-Konnect has enabled us to attend. On the issue of why so much money, I think that's a fundamental challenge that we have in this part of the world, that somehow if it is open, then it should be free. No, it's not so. And I think that argument of time precludes management or even researchers from following the open access route for communicating their researches. Somehow, I don't know how we came to that, but that's wrong, because the old model is that you write, and then the publisher puts them in place, put everything in line, send it back to you, it's reviewed, and then finally it gets accepted, and then it's published. That whole process is of putting everything in place. Somebody has to pay for that. And if somebody is to pay for that, then if the author cannot fund that, and it has no fund from maybe a grant or some money from somewhere to fund it, then what the author often does is to cede their copyright to the publisher, who goes on to put that work now on a kind of a sale, where a common thing is that you go online, you can see an abstract, but you want the full paper, they say, pay $10, pay $29, pay $50. That's what is happening. So for us to run the open access the way we want, the policy we wanted, we had to be ready to cater for both the green open access the gold open access or the hybrid of it, whether it was free or true, or you were requesting for us to pay for such. Actually, in our policy, we have we can pay as much as $1,000 for a single publication if you can publish in the Q1 journal. So, so we're also driving excellence in the process and making sure that we get the kind of returns for the investment. So that's essentially, and that takes off clearly the load of the neck of the researcher who's done the research right now. So all you need to do is you write, we pay, you publish, and the moment it's published, it's out there in the open, and then people can read it, and then you're visible. So that's why it's that cost. Somebody has to pay for the same.
Thank you, Prof. Conrad. So I have an idea of what is going on right now. I want us to advocate for waivers for people from low-income countries or developing countries to publish in open access. So if we still have people publishing, like for example, you said the cost of $1,000 to publish in, it's something that we can look more closely. Hello, Prof.
Hello, Professor Chinway.
Okay.
So
yes.
Continue.
Yeah, so I was just saying that I advocate for waivers for publishing in open access. Majorly, I'm into psychological science, so that is where I kind of have voice to talk about waivers for publication in open access. Sometimes preprints can be a good way to make your work open.
And then, I mean, the thing is, of course, in our policy, we have the waiver clause. I do know waiver negotiation on behalf of the school, and I'm hoping that we truly get this at the national level. And when we get a lot of things at the national level, it will be easier and cheaper to negotiate with publishers as a group, as one, and do a lot of things for the nation and then the researcher. I do a lot of negotiation when it comes to waivers and all of that, and we get some really good discount or complete waiver. But different journals and different publishers have their conditions for waivers and all of that. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. You have to go into the nitty-gritty of negotiating to get a lot of things out. Yeah, those waivers are there. But then, what if when you don't get the waiver? What happens? You have to pay for this. So those costs, they do come in. And if we're going to start anything open and we are not conversant of the place of such cost, is a failed project from the beginning. And that's why you're talking about starting now. When we first started open access, there was a national drive, but it died out because most people said they went to their school, nobody was ready to hear them, and a lot of things like that. So I'm happy that Eko-Konnect came up and started trying to drive this whole thing. And they will tell you the cost it takes to, how much it takes to run this whole thing. It doesn't come cheap. Although we say open, it's not cheap. It comes at a cost. So we really need to get the vice chancellors and all of that. And the other real challenge is that the money, I must say this, the money is there. It's just about channeling the right direction. The money is there.
Thanks, Prof. Professor Simon? Professor Simon, you have something to say?
I want to make a little contribution.
Okay, go ahead.
Can I say something?
Go ahead, Professor Chinway, and then Simon can speak after you.
I want to make contribution in the area of advocacy and getting people to engage themselves in open science. Actually, I want to believe, Professor Comrade, that it's not something that is going to be done independent of the management. But I am looking at a country like Nigeria, where you already have many research being sponsored by the TED Fund, and that is the taxpayers' money. And the money that is used for that research is coming from the taxpayers, and there is no reason why TED Fund cannot encourage or make room to support at least the open access, open science leading to the open publication or open access publication, and convince and insist that it must be open, because presently what we are seeing is that after this sponsorship or after this financial support, people go away and still lock it behind paywall. So we can start with TED Fund, and we can take it from there, move into the universities. If you don't get the management, you cannot get it right.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, Prof, that's an excellent contribution, Prof. And it's something in some of the other sessions and in our symposium that we held last year, we've been trying to push this on TED Fund. TED Fund at the moment busy, trying to push the National Research Development Foundation bill into the House of Assembly. And what we're basically been saying to them that they do need to incorporate open science policy into that bill. And I did bring it up. I did bring it up again with Popular in the session we had this morning, and he asked me to bring it up again with them in the focus group meeting that we're having next week. So yes, that is really very important. But I want to let, I think we've got about a few minutes, and if you can indulge us to take another 5 minutes of your time so that we end at 3:05, I'd like to hear what Simon Taylor, Professor Taylor, you have to say.
Very definitely, Simon. Okay,
Simon, you have yes, you have the mic.
Thank you very much. I just want to say,
Simon.
We can hear you.
Yeah,
I'm
on
already.
I'm on.
Okay.
Professor Conrad, I really enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you.
Particularly, I mean, it's probably one of the most clearly stated impacts of open science on an institution. I mean, the graph to show how your rankings improved, colossally during that time.
Yeah,
so I'm just kind of flagging that I'd really like, if you have the time, another time to talk to you about your experiences in depth.
Yeah, we could talk after now.
Yeah, so it'd be great sort of to schedule that sometime. There's two things that always come to mind when we talk about this. This is, these green open access versus gold open access. I mean, can you just share your views on that? Because certainly in my university, it's always a challenge. I mean, this is Brunel University in London, so it's a slightly unfair comparison, but we find it difficult to fund gold open access unless it's funded in research. So we therefore ask all researchers to deposit things locally as green open access. Is that a strategy that you've looked at? And I'd just like to understand if green doesn't work for you, what the reasons might be.
Actually, the green open access is our primary drive. So it's essentially, that's why we have the open repository policy. So we encourage persons to have their own pages where they can put the work in there, whether preprint or whether post-print. And then we have the institutional repository where we have two sections. There's the one for the publication and there's one for the thesis and dissertations. Okay, so we have that. And then we encourage people to join places like ResearchGate, LinkedIn, get your work out there and a whole lot of things. So primarily, we try to drive green open access, self-archiving and all of that, as much as you can. Google page, Google Scholar page, and a whole lot of that. So there's a whole lot of green open access. But we realized that we had a 10-year drive. Now, when we can't get through green open access, what do we do? So the investor management, speaking to the proprietary base, all right, if we cannot, of course, for example, a journal house like BMC, Biomed Central, will charge almost $2,000 for a paper. So we have a limit and we'll go negotiating. As for waivers and do a lot of negotiations and a whole lot of things. Francis are Taylor quite expensive on their hand. And in this part of our world, researchers don't get a lot of grants. People take money from their salaries to do it. So we try to take that out of the researcher here, as well as the payment. So yeah, on the primary front, we try go green. But when it doesn't come green, then we could go gold or a hybrid of it. I'm not a proponent of gold open access, actually. As a major signatory, both as a university and an individual, to Burlington, the Budapest and the Bucharest agreement, I like to see the flip, where we get real green open access and get things done. But for now, we, as an institution, we had an agenda. We had a vision, a 10 years vision. We wanted to be globally visible. And then we just had to fund some part of that. So essentially, that's what.
Oh, thank you. I do agree. I mean, it's an individual scientist writes the article and then volunteers review the article, you know, and then we have to pay the journal to make it openly accessible. You know,
that argument's been on for ages, but what do we do?
I know. I mean, I'm fascinated by what's happening with Plan S.
Right, you and Professor Simon and Professor Conrad might need to take the conversation. Yeah, you might have to take the conversation offline.
Well, sorry, my apologies, Owen.
Because we've actually gone past 3 o'clock, and I hope for all the participants that these discussions and presentations were very useful. We will launch the survey, we'll launch that survey, I guess, on Monday next week. And we'll be sending it out to all of the participants who registered for this session. Unfortunately, there's been some confusion about the Zoom links and the multiple sessions that we've had. So a lot of participants have not been logged into some of the sessions because of the initial confusion about the Zoom links, which are specific for each session. And unfortunately, we only got to realize there was a problem late yesterday, and we've not quite recovered from that. So we are missing a lot of participants because of a bit of a mix-up. But in any case, I'd want to thank our speakers, Professor Simon Taylor, Professor Conrad Omonihim, Professor Chinway, Omohimi.
Yes.
Yes. And that's bad because I'm close from your place. I'm not far from you. Dr. Pamela Abbott and Miss Irina Kuchma, thank you so much for your presentations. I think they're very useful towards developing open science communities. And I think on the back of the survey, we will look at having capacity building plans, webinar plans, and hopefully on-site training activities based on the feedback we get. And now, of course, I want to thank our moderator, Professor Chinway Anunobi, and Prof, I'll be reaching out to you as well so that we can work with you on making sure that the survey and some other activities get a full national complement. So I want to thank you again for your support and for your time that you spent here.
Welcome.
Yeah, and thank you to all the participants. I hope you found this useful and informative, and I'm hoping you will take some of the contributions and things that have been learned here back into your campuses. And we do intend, starting from next week, to start to reach out to all of you to see how we can use all the techniques that have been mentioned to promote open science practice and open science communities in our institutions. So thank you very much to everyone, and look forward to seeing you in our final session tomorrow, which is a kind of an Eko-Konnect community day where we'll be talking about the impact of some of the things some universities have been doing with the Eko-Konnect infrastructure and services and how they've been impacting in their universities. So if you haven't registered for that session, please do so. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.
And I'd like to say thank you to Arena and Pamela. We've not seen a while. They are still there.
They've left.